Space combat games have been around since the 1970s, and over the following decades many have provided ways of engaging players to a certain degree. However, it was in the 1990s where 3D console gaming was all the rage, so it was only logical for developers to bring the genre onto 32-bit hardware, and Conley Wars, developed and published by now defunct Psygnosis, was one title for the Sony PlayStation. The IP was a hit for the studio, and they would go on by making two sequels in the form of Conley Wars Vengeance and Conley Wars Red Sun, though just because it was well received on launch doesn't guarantee it will stand the test of time. So is Conley Wars still fun today, or has it aged poorly like many other PlayStation games? Set in the far future, resources in the solar system have been exhausted, but humanity have expanded their influence to other star systems. But when one Conley realised their resources are exclusively for Earth's benefit, they attempt to succeed from Earth's rule, only for their planet to be obliterated. In response, the other colonies form the League of Free Worlds, and as a nameless pilot, it's up to you and your allies to push back the Earth's colonial navy and gain independence. Though Conley Wars has a simple story, it's broken up into acts which are 3 missions long, and depending on how you perform, these have long-term effects on the narrative, so it's important mission briefings are perused before going into battle. Missions could range from escorting someone to their target, to simply taking out enemy fighters. Whatever the case, you'll be piloting a multitude of ships throughout the branching campaign, though sadly you can't choose what to take in battle, and they can't be upgraded. Combat revolves around removing their shields with anti-shield lasers, only by destroying them with conventional lasers. You're also armed with secondary weapons like missiles, torpedoes, and even a grapple gun for specific circumstances. The controls are responsive, but steering your craft is done with the D-pad, though thankfully the game does support analog control, and all ships are capable of rolling with the L2 and R2 buttons respectively. Accelerating and reversing are controlled with the L1 and R1 buttons, and in terms of firepower, selecting primary weapons is done by pressing circle, whereas secondary weapons are accessed with the triangle button. Bear in mind, secondary weapons are limited on ammo, while primaries only suffer from overheating. That said, shooting adversaries into space debris can be enjoyable, but I say can in quotations because maintaining that form is another matter. First and foremost, all ships, including yours, are prone to permanent damage, which means most engagements require extreme caution, otherwise it could result in mission failure either because you were too aggressive or you were distracted from your main objective. If that wasn't bad enough, getting caught in friendly fire is annoying when taking out targets, or worse, you end up shooting your allies unintentionally, leaving you being framed as a traitor and causing your ship to self-destruct. It simply doesn't make sense you get punished for friendly fire, yet your allies get no penalty whatsoever, making these situations cheap. The game also lacks a dodge ability, so your only solution of minimizing damage is to keep yourself on the move, in hopes you could tank their attacks, and even this for the most part is ineffective because of your ship's large hitbox and the need to be up close for your weapons to be potent. Not only that, capital ships don't indicate if they're using their powerful lasers, leaving you at the mercy of their destructive power. Granted, you are accompanied by teammates, but they aren't intelligent enough to influence most skirmishes, meaning you're left doing the hard work and it's frustrating, especially when protecting friendly craft. Furthermore, friendly capital ships seem to be underpowered when compared with their opposition, and combined with their incompetence, there's only so much you can do. Conley Wars is a short game, taking about at least 3 hours, but with the branching paths there's replay value in viewing the other outcomes, though as the game comes on 2 discs, switching between them will depend on which act you wish to revisit. The game may have been a technological marvel when it released in 1997, but when observed through a modern lens it clearly hasn't aged well. The voice acting to begin with is so-so, while the narrator and your commander do a plausible job on telling what's happening, the other performers during combat aren't memorable, sometimes not taking the situation seriously. The craft designs on the other hand are actually pretty good, though I think Psygnosis were fans of Star Trek when designing the enemy capital ships. I know so we can tell them apart, but I think they could have done better. I also think the textures look low res even for 97 standards, and if you get close enough some parts become transparent. As I mentioned, the story is simple, but Conley Wars has databases where you get further insight about its universe, such as its star systems, planets, and ships you'll pilot as well as encounter. This is good for the game because without them, Conley Wars would come off shallow. Finally, the score by Tim Wright is actually pretty good, using orchestral themes for adding urgency as well as atmosphere. In the end, Conley Wars is one of many PlayStation titles where time hasn't done it justice, but the game still holds some merits. Sure, you can't choose your ship before missions, and the fact they can't be modified, yet blowing up enemies is enjoyable to a certain extent, and they're heightened by Ian Wright's soundtrack, and the branching paths do provide replay value. So it's a shame when those moments are tarnished by mechanics that are unrefined, and in certain situations, unfair. Conley Wars may have lost its outstanding status, but there are far worse games than this.